Saying right. So hello everybody, this is the 14 days of Fountain Pens 2021 talk from Fountain Pens UK, and this is is it our fourth or fifth night? I can't even count anymore. Fifth night. And tonight I'm delighted to welcome the most dangerous man in Fountain Pens, bar none, Roy, who's run Izods pens for about 8 years now. Those of you that don't know Izods, it's best known for its absolutely incredible range of pre-loved, really Mont Blanc, but other prestige and premium pens. And Roy ships pens to, I think, at least 60 countries now. In addition to the prestige pens that Roy sells, he's also the exclusive UK retailer for Maiora and Nettuno, made in Italy. And at the very end of 2020, Roy also launched his own first own brand pen in partnership with Maiora, called the Izods Paradigm, which is a kind of a Mont Blanc 149 size pen, and very much a prestige pen. And along with the general subject of prestige pens, the Paradigm is going to be the topic of tonight's talk. I've got my Paradigm right here just to kind of sort of show people and whatever. So Roy, the floor is yours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin you to the screen, hopefully, and thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise and experiences with us.
I've just got myself in big on the screen now, which is quite intimidating. No problem at all. Well, it's lovely to be invited back. Last year I did an hour about Mont Blanc. And I was quite relieved to see that, checking a couple of months after on YouTube, that I'd only got 1 thumbs down on the review. So that was good. You nearly didn't have a host tonight because my cat decided to have some sort of seizure whilst having his dinner, but he's recovered. So back in the office and all is good. The cat is asleep under the Christmas tree. So yeah, as Jim kindly said, I run Izods, and yeah, we're probably best known for what we do with, I think pre-loved is an odd word, but it's better than used, I should imagine. So yeah, that's what we're probably best known for, but something that's always been on my radar ever since I started the business was creating an own brand pen. It took a long time to happen, and hopefully I'll explain why. But really, when I first got the note and was asked to do this, part of the subject was about prestige. What basically is prestige? And it's a really interesting one when it comes to pens, because I think if you look at lots of other industries, it's pretty clear cut what it means to be prestige. I'm sure there could be lots of people that would argue other ways, but for example, in the world of cars, it's pretty obvious which brands command prestige. And I think for a long time in pens, it was probably the case. I think Mont Blanc still commands its most prestigious spot, but there are lots of others. But I think over the last 3 or 4 years especially, the world of pens and prestige has really changed. I think now it's not just a case of brand, it's now materials. It's fascinating to see how celluloid has kind of become this mythical material, and that you can have prestige just around a material. So, you know, if somebody's produced a pen from Omas Arco bronze, that's instant prestige, and that pen can sell out simply because of the material. And it's really interesting, because I think it gives other brands a real chance to kind of bolster image and what people think about them, simply because they're using rare materials, unusual materials, and so it's not just a case of, out in the outer world, people that maybe don't know about pens, Mont Blanc is still the snowcat logo that they all recognize, but within our kind of wonderful community, it's amazing what's happening. It's totally different even to when I started the business. And so this partly was why I felt it was a good time to launch the Paradigm, which is the pen that we launched. I felt that there was more of a place for it, that it would fit in, rather than just being, oh, someone's trying to make their own brand pen. I felt that there was a useful reason to make it. So Jim kindly showed his Paradigms. I've got all 5 colors here tonight, so I'll just quickly show you. God, I'm trying to juggle them all. These aren't customer pens, by the way. It's fine. So there were 5 colours. God, Jim, you look at that. Even better, you saved me holding them up. So 5 colours. So from left to right, we've got a green. Then going on to blue, it's a very kind of vivid blue. It's the one that Jim's got. Now, our nod to something more classical was the grey in the middle. I didn't want to do black because I felt that I wanted something slightly different. So it's a very dark grey. And then it's a kind of vivid red. And finally, and personally, this is my favorite color, but everyone has their own, mauve. So they are the 5 colors. And the pen was launched very end of last year, very end of last year. And there were 75, 5 colors, obviously, and 15 of each. And that was classed as the launch edition. But anyway, to go back to the start, because here we have the finished article, but it took a long time to get there. I was talking to the guys before everyone kind of logged on, and I said, in one way, I feel a bit of a fraud, because there are some wonderful, amazing pen designers on our Facebook group who toil and work and have to put up with all the challenges, but because we partnered with Nino and the guys at Myora, I was like someone who bought a plot of land and decided to build a house on it. And I strolled round and said, I want my swimming pool there, and I want the cinema room there, and I need you to do a waterfall that goes over here. And I could just sit back. And then Nino was the guy who would be texting me at 11:30 at night on a Sunday saying, I've been in the workshop all day trying to work out how we can do this or how we can do that. And I'm like, oh, it's lovely. And so I've got the photos on WhatsApp and stuff. That looks really good, but actually it'd be really nice if we did this. So I apologize in advance to those people that have far more technical skills than me, but I will give you the story of how it came about from my kind of comfortable sofa point of view. So in terms of why the pen finally happened, oddly it was really COVID, which sounds odd, because for many reasons it was obviously horrendous in terms of the start of the pandemic for people, but really because I was heading out far less to see customers. It meant that I had more time in the office, and so a project that I'd scribbled rubbish pictures of for years could actually finally come to fruition. I was desperately looking earlier for my original sketch that's in a notebook, and I know it's somewhere in the office, but I can't find it. And I can't claim to have any artistic skills, but that is the first time I ever sketched the paradigm as it pretty much became. So yeah, anyway, so we worked with Nino and the guys at Myora, and really it was an obvious choice for me, because I've worked with Nino for a long time on various bits. As Jim said, we represent Myora and Natuno in the UK, and we've done various special editions with the guys there, Izods branded and bits, but we'd never done anything kind of standalone. And I'd had a chat with Nino and said it's what we wanted to do, and it was obvious he was the man. He was exceptionally keen to help, very passionate about allowing us to have the time and taking up his time to make it happen. And that was really important. And one of my criteria was that I wanted a manufacturing partner that would do something brand new. It would be easy to kind of rehash something, and that's not a bad thing if it's a collaboration. But if it's a standalone product, I wanted something that was built from the ground up. The initial kind of brief was that it was to be a larger pen, not for any kind of status symbol or anything like that. It was simply because if the range expanded, the paradigm was the flagship effectively. My other brief was that the ink window had to be visible when the cap was on, so as you can see there. And it was really just because that was something that, I don't know, it was, I know obviously Sailor do that, and there are a few others, but it was just something that I wanted to stand out from other pens, and I felt that it's a shame. We use these beautiful inks, and when the cap is on, nobody knows what's in it, nobody knows what you're using, whereas it seems that to have that wonderful splash of color, clearly you want it on the paper, but hey, why not be able to put your pen down on your desk and still see what ink you're using, or or whatever. And so that was something that I wasn't going to budge on. That was really important. The only other criteria, and again, it sounds poor, but it was something, if it was going to happen, it had to have something extra about it, something that I felt did it justice, that it was worth making. So the first mock-ups appeared, and these were digital mock-ups, in November 2019. I was away for the weekend and remember getting an excited email through with the mock-ups on, and it didn't look too different in the grand scheme of things to what it looks now, but it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't quite capture what it was. So it was at that point that we decided we'd take the project forward, and really go with it. And I think for me personally, it was a case of, in my business, when I'm buying and buying lots of pens, you move very quickly, and you get deals done. But for me, it would have been easy to get excited and think, oh my god, after all these years we're doing an own brand pen, and so yep, we'll do that and we'll do that and we'll have it ready by January. And it would be too easy to do that. So I kind of took a step back and tried to take it really slowly. The kind of nice thing for me was that it wasn't the core part of the business. So because what we do, because of the pre-loved element and the other bits that we do, that's the core of the business. That's that's the kind of engine room that fuels all these other projects. And so it wasn't that it had to be ready in a certain amount of time, because it didn't matter. I'd rather get it right and wait for it to be done, because it wasn't critical to the business. The first part of the journey was, what on earth are we going to make it from? You get kind of instantly lost in a world of, my god, what color, what this, what that, and there's so many different options. Effectively your main three are, do you go down the resin route, which is hugely understandable because it's easy to get hold of. There's loads and loads of colors. It's easy to have your own colors made up. But the kind of, I don't know, I felt it needed something more. If it was a flagship, if it was something we'd really kind of hang our hat on. The two other options were ebonite, which is, in short, in kind of layman's terms, very hard rubber. Doesn't sound very glamorous, but it is glamorous, but it just doesn't sound it. It's a material that's been used in pen making for more than 100 years, so it has a huge amount of history. The third choice was celluloid, and I clearly soon realized that would be very nice, but I'd probably have to go and rob someone's celluloid stock somewhere, or try and find it. There wasn't, the ones that I could get hold of had either degraded and so weren't suitable for manufacture really, or it didn't fit the bill in terms of look. So we settled on ebonite. As I say, it's incredibly hard rubber, but the reason we decided to do it is because it's really difficult to describe when all you good people can see, if you've not handled an ebonite pen, can see is the finished article. But it has a warmth to it. It has this kind of, this something about it that makes it a very special, very tactile. It's incredibly smooth, but the way it sits in your hand, it's not slippery. Sometimes with resin pens, if you get a sweaty hand, it's slippery, whereas with ebonite, it kind of keeps everything cool, and there's just something about it. It's also light, not overly light, as in the pen the weight of the pen doesn't fit the actual pen itself, but it is light, and it's also very durable. So ebonite was what we decided to go for. I think Nino kind of started to look at me like I was about to be like a kid in a sweet shop, because he realized that suddenly I'd gone from maybe we'll do a steel nib, maybe we'll just and then it was like, right, okay, we're going to do ebonite now, and it's got to be really good ebonite, and it's got to be really interesting, and cost wise, I mean, good ebonite is probably at least kind of 5 or 6 times as much as resin. It's good, you can get ebonite from a lot of places, but if you do it right, then it's not cheap stuff. It's also incredibly time consuming to work with. As I explained, that wasn't my issue. But I did feel sorry for Nino and the guys, because when he explained how difficult it is to work with ebonite, to get it crisp and to get it right, it has to be hand polished completely at the end to get the finish right. I realized it wasn't going to be easy, but it was the right material, because it elevated the pen up to something that I wanted it to be. I chose a company called Schoenberger, who are in Germany, who are very, very famous for ebonite. Really brilliant guys, and they work with a lot of big brands. And I meant to bring this with me tonight, but in the middle of my cat going crazy, I forgot to bring my big box of ebonite samples, because when I first got in touch with them, they send you a huge box of samples, and it's amazing. There's about 60 or 70 colors, and you just go, what about this, what about, and then you start thinking, well, why don't we do like 15 different colors, right? And then you realize that you've ended up spending like a 6-figure sum to create your first ever pen, and so it's like, no, we'll just stick with 5. But anyway, we'll come back to more of how we got to the colors and bits in a bit. The filling system was next. Obviously pretty much 2 options: cartridge converter or piston. Personally, I've got absolutely no issue with cartridge converter. It can be really handy, especially if you're out and about, or you want to get stuff changed quickly, or whatever. But it felt like piston would be right for the pen. It just seemed to be right, and because much of the kind of inspiration that I'd got at the initial stage was from historical models, from models that Montblanc released in the 50s and onwards. Piston felt right, and so we went with that. And I don't think the production guys were very happy, because they realized that they'd then have to change the size of the barrel that they thought they could use, that they'd initially come up with, to accommodate the piston. Oh, have I just seen someone will ever do a paradigm plunger? 1 sec. Yeah, I mean, there's at the end, there's a lot to say about future bits. So I will come to that, and I'm open to all sorts of different crazy and wonderful things. So it was on the list, but for ease and kind of without blowing the entire budget, we went for piston. Next was obviously nib, what nibs to go for. Steel, I have a huge love for really good steel nib pens, and I think they've come on a huge amount in the last few years. I don't think there's that same kind of stigma in a way. People don't know it's a steel nib, but at the same time, it didn't feel right for this pen. The price point in my head was always trying to keep a kind of cap on £400, but at the same time to make it premium. And if you're using ebonite and you're using a piston filler, it didn't feel right to go down the steel route. So I did also look at titanium, but I kind of couldn't get my head around whether I liked it or not, and whether it would look right. So we went gold, which again, you got the choice: 18K, 14K. We went 18. Just because hey, we can argue the pros and cons of 14 against 18 all the time, but it seemed an obvious option, especially to people that might not be as involved in what we do. It's that thing, gold content, 18K sounds ooh, nice. So anyway, so we set the kind of initial stage. We knew roughly what it was going to be, and how it was going to happen. But again, I had the luxury of kind of taking time on it, and say this is why I do feel like there are probably other people better qualified to talk about designing pens, because they don't necessarily they're in the middle of it, designing it, getting it ready, getting it launched. But I had the luxury of kind of sitting back and sitting at my desk and thinking, okay, what about this and what about that. the idea that we originally had, where we'd have the clip and then a big kind of metal clip ring at the top, so that connected the clip, that was dropped because it kind of breaks up the look of the pen. It kind of made it look very chunky at the top, and it kind of breaks up the look. The cap was also redesigned because initially the cap was quite flat at the top, again quite angular, and I don't know, it didn't seem to fit. Didn't seem to flow when you had it, so we redesigned this. This was the cap that became, and it's more elongated, with a kind of smoother finish, but it seemed to work better. And I think it was crucial having that time to step back and not rush into it. Meant that all these little things, and clearly that was my personal view on making it. I'm not saying that an angular cap isn't right. I'm not saying somebody else wouldn't have done it completely differently, but to get to something that's what I wanted, it was really nice to have that luxury of time. Especially when we kind of got to the stage of first lockdown, there seemed to be a lot of time to ponder things that maybe we don't normally have to. That was the positive side. There are lots of negatives, but the positive side was that, yeah, there was time to ponder little details on this project and generally, across the business, that you don't normally have time to do. The first point then was I kind of pestered the Mayora guys to actually get a physical mock-up so I could actually see one, because it's really difficult. You're making all these kind of semi decisions, ready to spend a lot of money and do a lot of things, and you haven't actually had a pen in your hand to see, does it work, is the size right, does it feel too big, is that too sharp, is that not feeling, is the grip section right, and so it was really important at that stage just to get something physical. Even if it wasn't how it ended up, it was just really important to have something that was tangible and there, and you could kind of make decisions based on that. The first couple of mock-ups were done with the solid grey ebonite, and they had a steel nib, and they didn't have a clip because we hadn't decided on clips. But my job really was, I just wrote constantly with it for 2 weeks, just to see whether I liked it, whether if I picked it up in the morning, did I think, oh, this is really enjoyable to write with. It might not have the finished experience, a bit like when car designers are building things, it might not have all the bells and whistles on it, it might not have everything, but you get the feel of what it is. And so that 2 weeks with this grey pen, I'm pretty sure, again, this is bad, I should have planned more. I've probably got that prototype somewhere, but we moved office fairly recently, and I know where everything kind of main is, but all these unusual bits like my old notepads and stuff, I don't know where they are. But anyway, so it was effectively that pen with just one solid band, no clip, and the steel nib, and I really enjoyed it. I spent 2 weeks just writing and writing and writing. I used it all day, every day, when I was talking to customers, scribbling notes on phone calls, everything. And I knew then that the basis of what the pen should be was right. Now it was just getting the final details, those little bits that make the difference. And that was, that they were the bits that would mean it could be either right or wrong. The first was, okay, we're going for a piston filler. Do we go kind of, Montblanc Pelican style, where you turn the end of the pen, the piston cone, and it operates the piston, and then you screw it back. Now, I like that, but actually I took some inspiration from the Graf von Faber-Castell Pen of the Year series, and I thought actually it means it's one less thing for someone to get wrong and to cause damage to their pen. So what we did was with a kind of a removable blind cap, and then the piston is operated from there. So it just meant that unlike with other brands where you can kind of push it too far and shear it off, it meant that you're not gonna, you've got less chance of, on an angry Monday morning, you can snap the piston on a pen. So that was the first choice. The second was, what markings were we going to put on the pen? The design itself was kind of, simplistic in a good way, I think. But yeah, that was the markings. We wanted something on it, and my inspiration came from the heat stamped pens of the 50s and earlier from Montblanc, where you used to get the kind of marking on the piston cone. Effectively, it would say what model it was, or it would say the nib type or whatever. And all along, I wanted to have a kind of a historical feeling to it. So a modern pen that kind of had a nod to things that have been in the past, and kind of, it's I suppose steal ideas, but things that I'd always appreciated. Thousands of pens coming through the business every year. There are some, they don't have to be huge expensive. I remember having an old Osmia pen come through that had again heat stampings on there, and there was just something nice about it. So you might not be able to see this, but I don't think you will be able to see it. But on the blind cap, what we did was on these ones, because there were 15 of each, so we've engraved the number and then the letters LE for launch edition. And so it's a little something. It's a little nod for me to historical offerings. It's, I'm not saying it's going to be the difference between you buying a pen or not, but it's just something that I'd always had in my head. And so for me, that was really important. The other one was cap turns. Again, hey, it's not a problem. It's first world problems, isn't it? But like, we had a Montblanc Homer in the other day, and unscrewing the cap, I could probably make dinner in the time it takes you to unscrew the cap on that one. Like, it's lovely. I mean, it's like a bit of theatre, because in the end it's like, whoa, but God, if you just want to make a quick note, it's not much fun. So for me, I wanted it to be really quick, like, one turn effectively off. It's not loose, it's not going to come off, it's really secure, but it's so that if you're quickly sat in a meeting, or you're watching someone talk about designing pens, then you can quickly just and you're done. And so that was really important. And again, it was one of these little things. The next one was the Izods branding itself. I've never been one of these people that feels like it should be, look, where it's nice. It's amazing that something that kind of sat for me in a dining room now has its own pen brand. But I never wanted it to kind of take over the design of the pen. I wanted it to be quite subtle. Now, for anyone that knows the logo, and if you don't, it's essentially Izods in black, and then round the edge there's a black box, and that's the usual Izods logo. But I've never really felt that it works very well when it's transposed onto a product. It kind of, I don't know, it looks odd. It looks oddly contained, and it stops the flow of the pen. When we've done special editions, the Nettuno special editions in the past, we had used the block, the existing logo with the box around the edge, and it's fine. Hey, look, I'm still very proud of those pens. In fact, have I got one? Have I got one in my desk drawer? No, poor. Right. But yeah, so it looks fine, but it just didn't look right. It looked wrong. So we removed the box round it, and we removed the box round it, and just had I don't know if you can see it, so it's effectively there, and just had Izods just literally put onto there, and it feels much nicer. It doesn't draw the eye in the same way, and that's really what I wanted. It's nice to have the brand on there, but really it should be subtle. It's not, it's a lovely pen, and then it's Izods after that. The next consideration was whether we actually, it's called a paradigm, but do we put paradigm anywhere? Do we say what the model is? Do we do anything? But I kind of again took inspiration from Pelican in a way. I didn't want it for the word paradigm to be splashed down the barrel, and I didn't think it needed it. I'm fortunate in as much as there's only one model, so you can't confuse it with anything else. But yeah, it didn't need it, and I think we looked at putting paradigm down the sides of the barrel, or somewhere on the cap or on the back of the cap ring, but it just felt, overkill. It felt like it was unnecessary, and it cluttered the pen up. We also looked at putting a gold ring at the bottom of the piston window as well. But again, it felt like it was there for the sake of it rather than it being anything obvious. You've got the one at the end of the barrel, and that kind of felt enough. So we kind of returned back at that stage to the ebonite colours, and as I said earlier, you get a huge box of like 60 or 70 different colours, and you go through, and initially I kind of played it very safe and gone for, and don't get me wrong, these look great, but the classic marbled, mottled ebonite colours with the kind of multiple colours in them, and they look, on the right pen, they look beautiful and they look fantastic. And I'd got a long way down that. I've still got photos on my phone that I'd sent to the guys at Myora saying, I think these are the ones we're going to go for. I think this is what we're going to do. And then I remember sitting on my sofa at home one night with my wife, and we were going through them. And we both just, like, to be fair, caveat here, just so you know, my wife knows too much about pens, bless her. It's not her problem. It's not her fault. Like, she knows too much, because you guys, this is useful for her, because she gets an hour when I get to talk to people and she doesn't have to listen. So it's safe territory for me. She's now at home and it's fine. I'm in the office, and so now the rest of her evening, I won't have to talk about pens. I've got it all out. But during this design process, she's she's had to put up with a lot, bless her. But anyway, so we sat there and she said, are you sure this is really it? You sure this is what you want to do? I thought, I don't really know. And I kind of felt like I'd pick those colours out because that's what you do with ebonite. You go for the classic appearance. That's what you do. And then it's like, actually, no, it's not right. This isn't what I set out to create. It's not Izods. It's not different. It's not how I wanted it to be. And so in that moment, the 5 colours were picked out. That was it. It was like, right, we're nailing this tonight, because otherwise this is just going to go on and on and on. And the lead time on ordering stuff is pretty chunky from good manufacturers. So if you order ebonite, it doesn't just rock up next day. And so that was when these colours happened. And actually, looking back at it now, I can't even understand why I didn't do that earlier on. I think it's just because it was like, okay, well, we'll create something that's familiar, something that people know. That if Montgrappa, Visconti, and lots of other brands are using these type of ebonites, well, that's what we'll do. But actually, it wasn't what the project was about. It wasn't what it intended to be. And so these colours represent what it should be, and I'm so glad that we did it. And to be fair, I say, my wife can take a lot of credit for that, because she did give me a look as if to say, you've bored me with this business for years, and I know it's not what it is. So why on earth are you doing this? I think, to be fair, most people think if you work in pens and your name's Roy, that, and I've said this before, that I'm kind of sat in a garden shed somewhere tinkering away, and that's absolutely fine. But it's not me to do these colours. So these were the ones, and these were the right ones, and I'm thrilled that we kind of changed that. I'll give you the meanings behind the names as well later on, because I get asked a lot what the different model names mean. I hate to say it, it's not very glamorous. Right, so anyway, we pretty much nailed the pen at this point. We've got everything nailed down, all the markings, all the bits. It was over to the guys then to do their stuff and make it happen. My job at this stage was to look at packaging. So much work had gone into the actual pen itself that I was conscious that nothing had gone into packaging really at this stage, just because there was no point spending time and resource looking at packaging if we couldn't actually get a final design of a pen done. So packaging was the next thing. I work with an existing packaging supplier that does our kind of boxes, our Izods boxes for any pen that we sell that hasn't got a box, so any Montblanc pen or anything else that hasn't got a box. So I had various Zoom calls with them, and went through various bits and kind of gave them free reign. I think they thought that meant free reign on budget, because the first ones they came back with were like some sort of Venetian palace, which I'm sure would have looked great, but it would have meant that your purchase price per pen would have been about £1,000. So we kind of scaled it back, looked at Perspex boxes, which looked nice, but it felt a little too industrial. It felt a little too for the sake of it, kind of, well, we'll go clear Perspex because look at it, it's a bright color and that's what you do. I don't know, it just didn't feel right. We looked at lacquered wooden boxes, very much in the kind of Anoto way, and they're very lovely. We looked at a grey box, and that was lovely, but it didn't feel like it matched up to the style of the pen. And so I wanted something simple that didn't take up too much space, that kind of, you know, that it was, the pen was safe in, but it wasn't elaborate for the sake of being elaborate. Hold on whilst I just shake the box out. So it doesn't look much, but we came up with, God, there is some branding on the top there. I'm just trying to get the light to catch it, which isn't working at all. No, it just looks like I'm waving around a box if you haven't got any sound on. But what we did was we designed a two-piece box. So the pen effectively sits in there, and then the top lid closes over, and then you can either store it standing up, laying down. So it was something relatively simple, but it kind of felt like it was right for the pen. So we've got the branding on, you can't see it because it's like a foiled one there, and then on the other side. And then a lot of work, strangely, went into the outer box as well, which people probably think I'm mad, really, because you'll see it you'll see the outer box once you bought it, but it just felt again right. So we worked with a brilliant guy. You'll find him on Instagram. I can give you his Instagram profile when I find it. His name's Tass, and he's a brilliant guy. And we said to him, can you design us something using fountain pen ink that reflects the style of the Paradigm? So it was a kind of commission for a piece of artwork, effectively. And this was the outer box. I've got the original of this, which is bigger, at home. And so we kind of kept it simple. So we had Izods there, and we felt that Paradigm should be the main word. Again, I'm not one of these people that feels like I need to splash my brand across everything in as big a lettering as possible. So we had Izods, yeah, just there, and then Paradigm underneath. Kept it very simple. I think we looked at about 5 or 6 different logo designs, some which were overkill and kind of very complicated to the point of it was just for the sake of it. But it felt like it, you know what it is, what in the design is simple, so why make everything else kind of overly complicated? We worked with our usual printers, and we got an extra soft matte lamination put on this box so that it matched up to the feel of the pen. It sounds really stupid, but it really does. It's so that there's that extra touch to when you get it. On this one, it hasn't got them on because I haven't stuck them on yet, but we went for, if anyone's had a Mont Blanc Writers Edition, the older style ones in the past, they have these corner stickers on. And so we put corner stickers on these, just as little extra touch. This was really, so I hate to say it, but when you buy a Paradigm, you're basically buying my brain for the last 8 years, because all the things I've liked, I've just poured into it. As I've said, it was like me going around and telling, the person I want a swimming pool there and whatever there. This was it. And then the only final thing was just an outer sleeve, just to keep everything safe, and then a little booklet that comes with it, so you know how to use it and do all your bits, and we fill in your limitation number and all the bits on there. So yeah, that was effectively that. We then took a big deep breath after having the pens photographed by a guy that I know and who's done some bits for us before. I do all our normal Izods photography, but it wasn't going to happen, and he laughed at the thought that I might do it. So we went to his studio. For any music fans, he used to follow David Guetta around and be his photographer, so I feel like he's reasonable enough. So we got him to do the photography, and then it was a case of launching. And it's that horrible moment where you've kind of lived in this bubble for a long time where you don't actually have to sell them. You don't have to show them to the world, because you can just be chuffed in your own head and at your own desk because you've taken something from a drawing in a notebook through to a physical product that's on your desk, and you've got 75 of them and everything's ready to go. And it's quite an odd experience, because for such a long time there was such a small group of people that knew anything about it. And yeah, I think for anyone that launches something, it's quite odd then to see it go out into the world, because then if everyone says, my God, what on earth have you created? That's, what does that look like? Why have you chosen that? And you're, oh my, I spent 3 weeks deciding whether to take a box out off the outside of my logo, and now so it was a kind of nervy moment. But I have to say, the feedback that we've had is amazing, and that's not me just kind of blowing our own trumpet. I think I was always very honest in the kind of appraisal that there wasn't going to be a queue of people forming at our door to buy all 75 of them on the day they launched. If you produce a £399 pen, crucially £1 less, if you produce a £399 pen, there are loads of options. People can spend their hard-earned pen money on a lot of pen for £399. So I didn't expect to suddenly go, cool, we've opened that part of the website and now they're all gone. It was about a showcase of what we could do, and to kind of start the ball rolling on another part of the business. And it's been amazing. I've seen some of you guys chatting, I think at the bottom, there are people there with more than one color. It's amazing to think that these have been bought as presents, and that people are thrilled, and that whatever. And I've totaled up earlier where we'd shipped them to, and it's obviously quite a few in the UK, but it's also Luxembourg, France, USA, Taiwan, Singapore, Austria, Hong Kong, Australia, Canada, and I think we actually shipped one to a customer in Prague as well. And it's amazing. It's mad to think that I'm sat in my office in Ipswich in Suffolk, and the product that I had a hand in is now around the world, and that's quite something. Price wise, we kind of kept it really as if I told you what the cost price was on these, the margin is tiny. Like, I can tell you that much. As I say, it was nice because we could keep the price pretty keen, because it wasn't the central part of the business. It was more about making something that we were really proud of, and that I was really proud of. And so I can tell you at £399, it's a hell of a lot of materials in there. This isn't something that we've knocked out at 50 quid a pen, or £100 a pen, or anywhere close to that. If you factor in all the bits that go into it, so I'm really delighted that people are pleased, and it really is. I think for me, genuinely, when you get an email from someone that gets it, oh, I love it, it's brilliant, I love this, I used to use this every day and now I use that really is quite something. It's amazing, because it feels like all that time spent was worth it, really. So that was really the design process. I think I saw a bit about what people have said, will I do this, will I do that in the future. That I think the paradigm as a flagship model will come and go. For me, these colors, I can't decide yet whether to retire them, whether they were launch edition colors and now they're retired. Part of me thinks maybe I will, because I like the challenge then of crafting something new for the paradigm, rather than just can we do a rerun on these. It feels, I don't know, I'm not saying they will be retired, so don't hold me to it, but it feels possibly like they might. So as a main model, the paradigm, once these ones have finished selling out, it may disappear for a month, it might disappear for a year or 5 years. I don't know. For me, it has to have something behind it that I can kind of say to people, a bit like this, where I can genuinely spend 50 minutes, whatever it is, talking about it, and I can be passionate about it. I don't just want to say, yeah, we did another paradigm and we ordered that, this material from there and it was done. I want someone to, if someone challenged me and said, why second time round did you do this? I want there to be an honesty in it. It sounds stupid. It sounds like a kind of sales thing, but it genuinely isn't. I'd like people to know that there was a lot of time spent on it, and it really was. So the paradigm will reappear. I've already got a few ideas, and there's a few bits happening, but I don't know when. There is also, more likely is that there's going to be a kind of a pared down version with a different model name, and that kind of gives more scope for doing bits. Again, I won't do it for the sake of it. It's not, oh, okay, well, we can produce, in fact, I already know the model name, but I can't reveal it. It just, but it feels like, yeah, you could do paradigm whatever, and it's still got to be right, but it could be, some of the bits could be kind of dialed down to make it not £400, maybe 150, 200, but still there should be something to it that makes it, that there's a reason. So yeah, there'll be loads of models. I kind of scribble out loads of things, and I bug the guys at my Aura on WhatsApp all the time and say, you haven't dug up any celluloid anywhere that you didn't realize you had, or can you make this, or how can we find a contact for that? And I've got 5 samples sat in my office of material that's trying to get as close to Arco Verde as possible, and 3 of them are rubbish in terms of how they look. One of them's reasonable and one of them is really good, but I don't know, there's loads of stuff, and I will do more, but it's, yeah, I'd like it to have an honesty about it, something that, oh, I've just seen some bits down here. Let me have a look. God, there's lots of bits, aren't there? Let's hear what are people saying. Now that Delta's back, could you tap into their Delta celluloid? I can't say anything about that. Is there anything you change about the model? Is there something you don't like? In all honesty, probably not. Not in a kind of, because I think I've created something that's perfection, but I think because so much time for me was spent on it, it feels like it's as good as at that point that it would have been, especially for a first model. I think, yeah. Jim, I like the idea. You said, yeah, an ultra black. I'll do your one off, Jim. One of one. Ultra. To be fair, well, leave it with me. I'll see what I can come up with for you. And I think, to be fair, that's partly the thing. I'd like the paradigm to be a bit of a movable feast in a way, that it can kind of, there might be some one-off bits for people. There might be, if people have got the right idea, then yeah, why not? There'll be other bits. I'd quite like to get a size 8 nib paradigm in there, ebonite feed paradigm maybe in there. There's loads of stuff, but going through the process, I think if you think too much about it all, if you bog yourself down in so many options, it never gets over the line. And that was partly the reason why it had sat in a notebook for me for so long, was because I'd thought, well, okay, I couldn't decide the way to take it. And I think at some point you have to go with, with a way, with an option, with a whatever. But yeah, there's all sorts, all sorts of stuff. Good question from George. Do you think you'll ever change your core business from Pre-Love to mainly a pen brand? No, probably. I don't mean that in a kind of flippant way, but I love what I do. It's a huge, it's a hugely big part of the business. I think maybe there'll come a stage where the pen brand will be more visible and a bigger part of the business, but as a core part of the business, I don't think it'll ever change, really. Thank you for the quite kind note about my customer service. Lovely. A lot of pen price costs, and it's lovely because and so it's lovely when people are saying all these great things, and that for me is, and that's that is love. I think a lot of retailers kind of say, oh thanks, feedback's really appreciated, or but I am genuinely thrilled. But at the same time, hey, if somebody buys one and gets it and says I really don't like it, it's fine, we'll sort it, get it sent back, it's fine. For me this was a kind of a labor of love for a long time, and I'm thrilled, I really am, and it's lovely to see so many people kind of here tonight, really. So that was the journey. I'm conscious I've kept you for nearly an hour already, but as my wife finds out, I do talk an awful lot. But if anyone's got any extra questions, I will happily answer them in as succinct a way as possible for you.
Thanks, Roy. That's been really, really great. I don't know if Ed's back yet, but I'm going to carry on comparing unless he jumps in and tells me he's back. I've just been through the chat just to kind of pull out some of the questions. So obviously there have been several questions about filling mechanisms generally, whether, I think what that probably ties into is things like filling mechanisms and urushi lacquer and that kind of thing. Is what does the future hold in terms of new pen models? Are you working on things that you plan to release soon? Obviously, you've got the recent partnership with Inoto that has, I think, been wildly popular, hasn't it? But how does that feed in? So I think there's a question, I think, for a lot of us about what's next and what can we look forward to, and can you tease or promo or whatever?
I think on the Inoto side of things, I think really the main focus is next year, and it's really a question of sitting down at the beginning of the year and working out a plan. I think it wasn't, and this, it doesn't mean to sound like this, it wasn't a case of right, let's start the partnership and get a model out there just so we can get one out there. The Stealth Rosso again was right, it was vivid in terms of color, but my specific request, and we had this at the first meeting, was that the kind of classic Inoto trim should be oxidized to give it a kind of different appearance. But I think you'll start to see the main bulk of that next year. There's no finalized plans on, right, I've got one on my desk and this is what it's going to be. There's ideas, and we've looked at bits, but really it's I know those guys are really busy on the run up to Christmas, and it's always really busy for me as well. So I think it's probably time for a coffee in January and work out what the plan will be. I'd envisage in 2022 that there'll be a bit like we did the Nettuno trilogy. There will probably be a Maiora equivalent. So that will happen. The nice thing for me is, because I'm independent in terms of a brand, and because it's my business, I get to kind of do all these lovely things and not have to be, not have to worry about offending anyone. We get to work with amazing people, people that are very famous in the pen world and that have done amazing things. And it's freedom, really. So if like the Inoto thing, we're based an hour away from Inoto, so it's like, well, this is crazy. We sell pre-loved Inotos. You're an hour up the road. You're an amazing historical company. Why on earth have we not met up? And so these partnerships are formed often on the simplest of things. So yeah, there will be more Inotos, there'll be a Maiora, few specials, and there will be more paradigms. I feel I feel a good pressure to release more paradigms. Now that if you've done all the groundwork and got the model right, how you want the look of it, it seems a real shame then just to kind of, oh well, we'll retire it and wait for the right material. But the kind of balance is more paradigms, but the right ones. They've got to be interesting. I'm not just going to do it in a kind of resin that everyone's seen 40 times on another pen and just make another paradigm because hey, let's do another paradigm. So yeah, there will be other bits, and I'm always keen to work with brilliant brands, and always keen to kind of push and see how far they'll go on changing things. And do you accept this color? Can we do that? Can we swap this out? Because I'll always ask the question, and they can just tell me to get back in my box if not. So
I think a big
yeah.
theme for the talks so far over this sort of season of talks has been kind of people that push at the boundaries of pens, and I think again that's kind of what you're talking about. There's loads more questions, Ros. I'm going to come to you in just a second, but Anne Steele asks, I've been dying to know what pen you've been fiddling with for the last hour.
It's nothing that glamorous. It's a Montblanc Mark Newson rollerball. So it's not that glamorous. What else have I got on my desk? There's a Bohem XL. That's more interesting probably for people. What else? A Star Walker red gold metal. There's a nice Visconti there.
Oh, nice.
That's nice. What else? There's a few other bits to hand. There's a 147 Traveller in Bordeaux. Have I got anything else on my desk? No, most of the stuff behind my desk, and then over that side of the office that you can't see is where most of the other interesting stuff resides. But yeah, it's a Mark Newson, but that's what I use on a day-to-day basis if I'm if I'm not using a fountain pen, just because it's comfortable and it's easy to write with. Absolutely. So yeah.
There are plenty more questions from the chat, but Ros, do you want to jump in and ask your question? We'd love to hear from you.
I've actually got two questions. One is, because the colour of your pens are quite unique, have you thought about maybe on your next batch doing limited editions with ink colours and say notebooks that match?
Yeah, that's all. I could probably find you the notebook that I've already scribbled that on a list for. I've already talked to the people about inks, so I could email them in the morning and tell them to go. So I've got the bottle design done. I've got the colours pretty much nailed down. But again, it's doing things at the right time, because you order in relatively big quantities, and it's doing things. But yeah, there will be inks, but there'll probably be maybe some bits that make them interesting, or as interesting as possible, and the bottles are quite interesting. Notebooks, yeah, again, there will be extra bits like this, and yeah, it's so in short, yes, it's just making sure that they all appear at the right time, so that I know the plan for the next paradigm model, and therefore can build everything else around it.
And for those that don't know, I mean, Roy's already got good heritage with inks as being the first person in the UK to bring out Robert Oster inks, and to have, I think you were involved in two of the most, I would call the most valuable Robert Oster inks out there, so Ruthenium and Heroes and Champions, which are both
Ruthenium, you say, do you mean? There we go. There's my bottle of Ruthenium.
I've still got mine. It's awesome.
And then there's my own bottle of Champions and Heroes ink as well.
Both awesome. I mean, Champions and Heroes obviously really to me really speaks songs, because obviously it was the pandemic ink, but yeah, just awesome. Sorry, Ross, you had another question. I'm sorry.
Yes, my other question is actually to do with the paradigm. With your pre-love pens, and I just bought the Edson from you.
Yes, you did. Yeah,
which I love.
Fantastic.
How do you not keep all those pens as they come in?
My wife. That's how. She's a director of the business as well, and look, in fact, she gets first dibs on pretty much anything that comes in. She is, as I think Jose, I think, who found out that she took first dibs on an M805 demonstrator recently, and she proudly sits with that on her desk. But you can't, like it would. I'd be bankrupt, and the business wouldn't exist, because there's so much stuff that comes in that I would love to have, but I have to stop myself, so I never keep anything. But I suppose the flip side of that is I get to see these pens every day. I get to, stuff that comes in that there are very few of. I get to see them, and that's kind of enough. But yeah, I just have to stop myself, because otherwise it would all go very wrong, and I definitely wouldn't be talking to you guys in a year's time. There'd just be some very cheap pens for sale. So
loads more questions coming in. George has asked twice. I think it's a really great question. What's behind the name Paradigm?
It was really about crafting something that was a kind of classic example of, a fantastic example of something that, and again, I really like the name, but I don't want it to sound like, you know, oh look, this is the ultimate pen. This is, you know, because we're a small brand in the global presence in terms of brands. But yeah, it was about a kind of a version of a pen that reflected all the things that a pen should be. And in fact, I didn't tell you about the name, but the names, did I? Do you want to, Jim? Do you want me to tell people why I've called the names what they are?
I'm sure people. I mean, I obviously know because we spoke when I reviewed your pens. But
Right. So you'll realise that partly this is very why this is a very personal project to me. So the mauve coloured pen. Where have I just put the note? Oh my god, I've just lost the paradigm.
Shall I share screen again? Would that help?
That's all right. Yeah, please. That'd be brilliant. I don't know where I've put my mauve paradigm. Don't know. But yeah, Jim, if you can, that'd be fantastic.
I'm shamelessly sharing my own website. I apologise for that, guys. I'm not trying to promote in any way, shape, or form. I'm a very occasional pen reviewer, but Roy kindly helped to review the paradigm. So,
so from left to right, so I'll do them really quickly. We've got the green, and that's known as Grigson green, and that was a kind of a nickname for an old relative of mine. Next, we've got Baylis blue, and Baylis actually is also responsible for the name Izods, because my great grandparents, their surname was Baylis, and they lived in a place called Izods Yard in Redditch in Worcestershire. And so Izods came about because of Izods Yard. I wanted something that wasn't Roy's Pens, or, you know, because when I started the business, I envisaged, I suppose, sitting here maybe talking about a pen with a brand, and Roy's Pens didn't really sound that great, so Izods was taken from there. So yeah, Baylis blue is my great grandparents' surname. Next we've got Jeffers Grey, and Jeffers Grey is named after Geoffrey, my parents' basset hound, and his nickname is Jeffers, so that's where Jeffers comes from. Then we've got Ringsted Red. Ringsted is a village in North Norfolk, right near the coast. And me and my wife's granddad lives in Hunstanton, so just down the road. And every late November, we always book the same cottage in Ringsted, and we've done it for the last 7 years. And so after we got married in November 2019, we came to Ringsted, and I was like, actually, I'm going to name one of the pens Ringsted Red. So that's where Ringsted Red comes from. And the last one is Mollusk Mauve. My grandma was called Molly, but everyone who knew her called her Mollusk. And so, yeah, why not? It was Mollusk Mauve. So they weren't done just to be kind of, and that's why I keep quiet about it. They're not done to be kind of corny and, oh, look, we've done like a family thing. But it was a nice nod to various people and various, you know, bits of life that kind of, yeah, put another personal element to it without kind of having this long explanation on the website or whatever, because it felt like it didn't need it. But as you guys are here, it's quite nice to share, yeah, the meaning behind some of these. So yeah, that was that. Thanks for the putting the screen up, Jim.
You're welcome. No, thank you. What other questions have we got? I think there's probably gonna be more questions. I've got a few more written down, but I think people are really offended by my all the tabs on my browser. I apologize, guys. that's my it might reassure you to know that's my CPD for healthcare. So that's anyway, as a by the by. What else have we got? We've got I think Roz has already asked you about inks and notebooks, and I think, as I say, that will be amazing. Lucy said one of what we'd really love is a tutorial on how you gift wrap everything.
Oh, it's because every day that's what I do first thing in the morning. I normally get into the office at probably 7 o'clock. I get into the office, I make a coffee, and I sit at that desk behind me, unless I can get somebody else to do this side of things, but normally it's me, and I wrap things. So you can see a pile of wrapping paper at the back. So with the bad thing, it means that I do all the Christmas wrapping in my house. I also get calls from relatives who say, I couldn't just drop a few presents around and you wrap them, could you? Because they know that I wrap 3,000 boxes a year. So yeah, let's do it. listen, because to be fair, having talked about Mont Blanc last year and designing a paradigm this year, if I don't do anything interesting in the coming year, you're not going to want me back unless I'm talking about wrapping, maybe. So we'll do that.
I feel reminded of the scene from Love Actually where he's buying the necklace for his.
That is it. I did recently actually wrap a pen for a customer whilst they were here, because they popped in and I wrapped it up and they did stand there and and I felt a bit like the Rowan Atkinson of it. It's like, and I kind of I've done everything, and right, I get the ribbon and then we'll do that and then we'll put it in a bag, and so I just need the cinnamon sticks and then I'll be there.
Fantastic. What else we got? There have been, so again, one of the other things that's sort of come up a few times this week is about pens with different textures. That seems to be quite a thing at the moment, certainly within the Fountain Pens UK group. So we've had chats yesterday with Ruth Bolton from Shibui North, who specializes in Urushi.
Yeah,
and we've had Sunil Malkani from The Good Blue, and we've had Ben Walsh from Gravitas, and I think those guys are kind of united by the idea of kind of surfaces and finishing and precision on pens. I think there is something in what you do that sits with that, and I guess the question around that kind of goes, where are you at with textured finishes on your pens? Is that something you'll ever look at?
Sorry, you carry on, Jim.
Please.
It definitely is, and I think that's partly why I say the paradigm will only return if it's something interesting. For example, in fact, it made me think about it this morning actually, because I sent out an OMAS T2 titanium rollerball, and it's incredible. The finish on that kind of matte titanium finish, just the everything about it is glorious. And I think that is something that's really important, and that's why, as I say, I won't just I didn't 100% make the call that those colors won't return, but they might not return in the same form. They might return in a different way, because it's got to be interesting. It's got to have something behind it that means that you do it. Otherwise, and again, there's no right or wrong in what you release or what you do, because people do it for different reasons. But as I say, one of the joys for me is this can be like a special projects division of the business, and so I can chat to people all over the world, and if I uncover people that are doing really interesting things, well, then we'll do it. We'll just say yes and we'll do it. But it's got to be interesting. So I'm open to all sorts of different weird and wonderful materials, or how you create finishes, or so I've had people sandblasting old barrels for 146s or 149s, and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff that I've had done over the years. Not a lot of it that reaches the light of day, but I'm always kind of experimenting with different stuff, because occasionally you stumble on something that works really well. So definitely.
Amazing, thank you so much. Team, if there's any other questions, jump in, ask them. I'm sure there must be people who've got other things they want to know. Glow in the dark ebonite paradigm.
I'll do a levitating paradigm as well. One that writes for you. One that never runs out of ink. Just give me about 30 years. My wife will have left me, because I'll have bored her with all sorts of weird pen things, and I'll still be sat here with a panda with a hat on behind me. That's the brilliant thing about, especially over the last few years, about the pen world. The reason that we're in it is because it's so varied. There are so many people who are starting to say it's brilliant what was done, but why don't we do this? It doesn't always work. It doesn't always look brilliant, but it's fantastic that there are so many people that are prepared to invest time and money and things in making making it interesting for all of us. And I think for a long time pens were kind of consigned to traditional colours, and if you did anything too crazy, it was a bit odd. But you can kind of do whatever you want now. If it's good, it writes well, it's at the right price point, and it's brilliant, it's lovely. It's such a nice industry to be in, and I think it'll only become more varied, more interesting, more wild than it already has. And then there'll probably be some huge fight when the world runs out of Arco Bronze and Verde. But
My wife said something to me recently. She said, "Jim, if you're going to have £1,000 a month habit, I'm glad it's fountain pens and not cocaine."
that's why I never feel bad. You see, I'm not responsible for bank balances, mortgage defaults, relationships, but at least I know that I'm supplying lovely pens to people, and so I sleep very soundly at night.
Absolutely. If there are no other questions for the moment, there's one other thing that comes with tonight. There's no big special Big Bang announcements, guys, but Roy has very kindly sponsored tonight's event. So this is kind of brought to you by, essentially by Izods. And I think, if I'm right in saying, you're offering a prize of a Mayora fountain pen. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yes, that's right.
Like the other nights we've done this, we've done a random number generator and compared it against the list of people who've dialed in, and the numbers that came up to win were, let me have a look, I've got them. Ed Brown did them and they sent me the numbers. I'm just going to find them. Here we go. So the first random number generator that we drew was number 31, which on Ed's screen is Sarah Badley. So Sarah, you have won a Mayora fountain pen. Congratulations. Of course. So that's Sarah Badley, and the winner of the Robert Oster Burgundy Chocolate Notes ink, which is the FPUK 2021 Special Edition ink, is number 13, Gary Duncan. Congratulations, Gary. So if you'd like to claim those prizes, just drop a message to one of the FPUK admins and we'll organise it all for you. So congratulations, guys, both.
Can I just go? I just noticed Joe's comment on the chat about the panda and said it's a curious picture for a pen seller. You haven't seen the rest of the office, Joe. There's bears with umbrellas. There's dogs in camper vans. This is how, you see, we end up producing pens in bright colours, because we spend too much time surrounded by psychedelic animals.
I sense you have a dog in the office, because I'm seeing a dog bowl and a dog bed.
There's a dog bed. He's not in. He's at home. Mike, the rescue dog, is at home. He was in today. He's in most days. So his bed is there, and his water bottle, his water bowl, and then his treats are hidden behind there. So he'll be in tomorrow morning. He normally spends his time split between his bed and then perching at the window, because that looks out onto our industrial park bit where all the other buildings are. So he's he's quite famous in here. He just trots around. He had his Christmas jumper on this morning as well. So.
Oh, lovely. Roy, look, I mean, I think it goes without saying, those of us that are lucky enough to own Paradigm pens are very lucky and very happy owners. I mean,
thank you.
I think I'm very transparent about this. I absolutely love my Paradigm, and I think for 400 quid you get a pen that outshines the Mont Blanc 149. It's incredibly light and comfortable. It's got a beautifully tuned Jovo nib. It's got a beautiful piston. They just balance and write are an incredible piece of work, and they also are presented beautifully and finished beautifully. The polish on them, and the this idea of the Paradigm being an archetypal example of something that is at the highest form of art and science. I think it's a great description for your pen. It's an absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm toying with them, as I say, looking at kind of my preference.
Thank you.
Up this evening.
It is really incredibly kind, and I think for me it's fantastic, because it is so lovely to know that what I did was kind of right. It's not for everyone, but it's lovely to know that people really enjoy it. And I think that ultimately is what it was done for. It was done so that people could enjoy it and see a little bit of what I'd kind of envisaged over all those years. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for giving up your evening again to spend it with us. And I think we're all really looking forward to seeing what's to come next, whether it's with Inoto or from your own relationships with Mayora or beyond. So thank you so much for this evening. What I'll do is I'll stop the recording now, but I'll leave the chat open, guys. If you've got questions or other bits and bobs you want to ask, then go for it. But thank you again, Roy. It's been a really entertaining talk. So.